we all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? And at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd ask everybody to remain standing. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, unfortunately today, we've seen another tragedy in this great country of ours. Down in Florida, Parkland, there was another school shooting. 15 people have been killed, students. Another 14, last report I heard, have been injured. So I'd like to take a moment of silence in remembrance of those 15 students, the 14 that have been hurt, and their parents, and say prayers for them. Thank you. And for that, can I get a roll call?
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Adriano?
Here.
Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Ms. Smith? Here. Mr. Williams?
Here. John, do you have the public notice?
Town of Patterson, notice of public hearing. Amendments to Chapter 154 of the Patterson Town Code. Public notice is hereby given that there has been introduced before the Town Board of the Town of Patterson, New York on January 10, 2018, an amendment to Patterson Town Code, Article 9, Chapter 154, entitled Zoning, Uses in Commercial Recreation CR District, which amendment will revise Article 9 of Chapter 154 by providing for commercial recreation areas and recreational type uses within the Town of Patterson as a floating zoning district. Now therefore, pursuant to Section 20 of the Municipal Home Rule Law, the Town Board of the Town of Patterson, New York will hold a public hearing on the aforesaid amendment at the town offices, 1142 Route 311, Patterson, New York, on February 14, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the evening of that day, or as soon thereafter as may be held, at which time all persons interested therein shall be heard. The Town Board will make every effort to assure that the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Anyone requiring special assistance and/or reasonable accommodations should contact the Town Clerk. Dated January 11, 2018, by order of the Town Board of the Town of Patterson, Antoinette Kopek, Town Clerk.
This is somewhat very unique zoning amendment that we are proposing here, and I'd like to just read the first two paragraphs so everybody understands what we're doing. The purpose of the Commercial Recreation District is to afford the Town of Patterson an opportunity to permit the establishment of commercial recreation throughout the town on those lots that are appropriate for the intended use, to ensure such operations are sited on property in a manner that negative impacts can be appropriately mitigated, and to encourage recreational and economic development opportunities which would be in harmony with and complementary to Patterson's rural character, historic resources, and natural assets. The Commercial Recreation District is a floating zoning district, i.e. a district of undetermined location which may be placed on a specific tax map parcel by petition of a property owner and legislative act of the Town Board. A floating zoning district may only be applied to a specific property if the stated criteria are satisfied, a finding of compatibility is made, and a conceptual development plan is approved for the property. That's the intent of this zoning amendment. And with that, I would ask that anybody that has any comments or questions on the proposed legislation, if you could approach the mic, give your name for the record, and state your question or your comments. Going once.
Can I make one comment?
You may.
Isn't it that, what is the acreage again?
I believe the minimum acreage is 50 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any board member?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
All in favor? Okay. This is, sorry? One moment. Oregon is calling.
And the
Oregon. Okay.
Oregon.
I'll do the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, would somebody like to do the reports?
I'll make a motion that we accept the reports listed on the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would somebody like to make a motion on the supervisor's report?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the supervisor's report for December 2017, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would somebody like to make a motion on the minutes?
I will make a motion that the town board approve the following minutes. Public hearing minutes, fire department contracts, January 10th, 2018. Public hearing minutes, local law 1-1, Veterans Cold War exemptions, January 24th, 2018. Public hearing minutes, local law 1-2, senior citizens exemption, January 24th, 2018. Town board meeting minutes, December 13th, 2017, December 27th, 2017, January 10th, 2017, and January 24th, 2008. Oh, wait a minute. January 10th, 2018, and January 24th, 2018. So moved.
Good
Second.
catch.
All in favor?
Aye.
Order to the bills.
I will make a motion that the town board approve abstract number 2 dated January 26, 2018, in the amount of $209,576.25. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first on my agenda is a resolution to approve an extension of a contract with Well Sanitation. Well Sanitation is the company that we use for disposal of our refuse for garbage district number 2. 2 years ago, we negotiated a contract for the sum of $91 a ton disposal charge. They have agreed to hold that price again for the coming year and for 3 additional years after that, or 2 additional years after that. So, I'd like to introduce this resolution, and without objection, we'll enter it into the minutes as though read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, second on my agenda is local law. We just had the local law number 3. We just had a public hearing on the local law for the floating zones. This is a resolution of adoption for local law number 3, creating a floating zoning district for commercial recreation. And I'd like to introduce this resolution and without objection enter it into the minutes as though read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And my executive session, which is both legal and personnel, I will defer to the end of the meeting. Mary.
Hello.
Hello.
Happy Valentine's Day. Okay, the first item on my agenda is the amendments to the employee and EMS handbook. Recently, there's been a change to the New York State Civil Service law, which now allows an employee to take leave for any type of cancer screening, when previously it applied to only prostate and breast cancer screening. Also, you are now allowed to take leave for blood donations and bone marrow donations. So I make a motion to approve the amendments to both the employee and EMS handbook.
They are 2 resolutions, so we should do them separately.
Okay, sorry. Both the same resolutions. I'll do the first one. Make a motion to approve the resolution to the employee handbook per resolution as read. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So I make a motion also to approve to the EMS handbook, both of the amendments per the resolution as read. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What's next?
All service
Full
agreement.
service contract. Okay. Okay, so the next item is concerning the pool service contract, service and maintenance contract for the wastewater treatment plant, which is located at 470 Cornwall Hill Road. I'd like to make a motion to approve wrong with me tonight?
Approve the
Approve the agreement that authorizes payment of $12,290 to the Paul Corporation. So, approve the contract, sorry, for Paul as read, make the resolution as read, sorry. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I've been up since 2 a.m.
Mhm.
Okay, and the third one on my agenda is the Putnam Lake Carp Gate. Hopefully I get that one better. Okay.
You're doing just fine, Mary.
Oh,
Yes.
sure. Okay, so, this one is concerning the release of the retainer money. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the release of the retainer money for the construction of the Putnam Lake Carp Gate per the resolution as read. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Peter?
Okay, first item on my agenda is a 3089 Route 22 Associates LAC tax certiorari. I have a resolution for the settlement of the tax certiorari proceeding amount of the application of 3089 Route 22 Associates in the town of Patterson. The assessor of the town of Patterson and the petitioner have agreed to settle to the original assessment was $381,500, reduced to $233,000, which is a reduction of $148,500. Also has an addition on this resolution to have a settlement with by discontinuance of tax certiorari for another proceeding of the owner for the Acme property. So I'd like to accept this resolution as read. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second item on my agenda is portable toilets. This is always a crappy job, but someone's got to do it.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve portable toilets for the parks for the 3-year price agreement with Royal Flush for not to exceed $100 per unit, which is $3,500 per year, which is $10,500 for 3 years. So moved.
Second.
Are we approving a 1-year or a 3-year contract?
What would you like to do?
Well, it's laid out for a 3-year.
Great.
3-year? I just want to make sure we're doing a 3-year.
Yeah, make the motion to approve the 3-year contract.
It's unlimited flushes, so
For 3 years.
for 3 years.
3 years. So moved.
All right, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Last item is the letter of resignation. This letter is from Frank Messina from the Sanitation Department. It's deep regret that I will be resigning from the Town of Patterson Sanitation Department due to medical reasons and seeking disability retirement as of January 8th. It's been my pleasure to serve the taxpayers of Patterson and will miss them. Make a motion to accept the resignation from Frank Messina from the Sanitation Department. So moved.
We need an effective date in there as well, so make it effective today? Today.
Today. As of today.
You don't want it as his request of January 8th?
No, I do not.
Okay.
February 14th.
Got it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's all I have.
Charles?
Recreation requests. We have a memo from Matt Chabaro, Recreation Supervisor. He is looking for the board's authorization to partner with U.S. Sports Institute to offer new programs that revolve around lacrosse. I'll find it. So he's looking for a parent and me multi-sport squirts program, a squirts lacrosse program, and a senior squirts lacrosse program. So we would partner with U.S. Sports Institute. So I will make a motion that the town, the cost per participant is $110. So I'll make a motion that the town board authorize the Recreation Department to proceed with offering this program. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So I've been working with Matt and the Putnam Lake Park District on trying to resolve some of the issues along with this program. I think it's a good program. Essentially, we are setting the program up, and our stake in is at a little bit of an administrative cost along with some advertising. So we don't have a lot invested in this. They are going to supply the staffing, the equipment, everything else. There has been discussion that the rec center is going to hold the program on Memorial Field in Putnam Lake. The rec center would be getting 20% of the proceeds. They are requiring a minimum of 15 individuals to participate in the program. Essentially, the rec center for this would be netting $330 to run the program. It's been recently brought to my attention that the Putnam Lake Park District is looking for a percentage of that. But I have not yet been able to come up with exactly what they think is an appropriate percentage. And then that's a recommendation back to the town board.
Is the rec center going to be accepting all the registrations and payments and stuff, or does that go right to the US sports?
It's going to be going through the sports. So again, we don't have a lot involved in this, but I want to make you aware that we have not resolved the issues between the park district and the rec center about splitting of the proceeds. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next, we have a memo from Matt requesting to hire Colby Romalia as a junior staff member at $9 per hour. So I'll make a motion that the town board approve the hiring of Colby. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Next, we have another memo from Matt relative to summer camp prices, which he's asking for our approval. The multi-camp, flag football camp, Lego camp, pre-K camp, and after and before care for the various camps. He lists out that there's a early bird pricing for the multi-activity camp for registrations before up until May 21st. So I will make a motion that the town board approve Matt's recommendations relative to the various camps and the pricing. And as I understand it, he will be publishing this upon our approval. So through the recreation, e-blast, and other means, websites, etc.
God bless you.
God bless. So I'll make a motion that we approve the summer camp prices as outlined in Matt's memo of February 13th. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Lawn maintenance bids, we have the annual go-around with the seasonal lawn maintenance and landscaping requests for bids for both the town properties and also for the town property within the Putnam Lake Park District. So I will make a motion. Do I have to make two motions on this, or can I do one?
You can do one motion asking,
Right.
directing the town clerk to advertise the bids.
Right, so I'll make a motion that the town board direct the town clerk to advertise for bids for seasonal lawn maintenance and landscaping for the town properties, like I said, and for the Putnam Lake Park District properties. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I have a conference request form for an employee to attend the Hudson Valley Safety Association seminar on,
The topic.
active shooter seminar
Yeah.
in March. We'll make a motion that the town board approve that conference request. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask that you table this, but go ahead.
Okay. Next, we have before us a training request memo from our EMS administrator, which we will table to a
Yeah, I would
future
like-
meeting.
I would like Denise here so we could talk about it with her. Because, I know we have to provide for training for our EMTs, but I think we need to look at all the options that are available to us first.
That's it.
Sean?
Okay, first item is another tax certiorari that was negotiated between the courts and the plaintiff and our assessor department for properties relating to Everest TV Inc. How would you say that? It's a weird, anyway, Everest TV Inc.
Yeah.
It encompasses 12 parcels of land. The total assessments went from $795,000 down to $600,000. A net difference of $195,000, which has a tax consequence of $7,219 per year. Upon recommendation, I'll make a motion that the town of Patterson accept the recommendation and settle this tax certiorari in the form of resolution, and enter the resolution into the record as though read. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, we had the resignation of the gentleman, Frank Messina, from the sanitation department. That was read, I believe, by Councilman DeAndriano earlier. We had hired a part-timer to work in the sanitation department over the last year, actually from last April. So we have a recommendation to hire, to hire Jarrett Ledereski, who has been working part-time and working out wonderfully. He's a great fit for the department, and he's proven himself to be a hard worker. So with a start date of next Tuesday, I'll make a motion that we make Mr. Ledereski full-time. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
You want to discuss?
Okay.
Okay.
We have a request for the yearly advertising, request for bids for various materials for the highway department, things like wash sand for ice control, crushed stone, bituminous concrete laid in place, annual tree work, and diesel fuel. So I make a motion to approve that the town clerk advertise for those bids. And the bid year is from April 1st to March 31st. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, I wish Kevin Burns was watching. I could maybe do him proud here. We have budget transfer request number 68. This is also closing out some of the books from 2017 and just making things whole. And this is a request to transfer $1,672 from sewer contractual miscellaneous to sewer contractual building and grounds. So make a motion that we approve that budget request. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we are down to other business. Does any town board member have any other business they wish to bring up at this time?
I just have one thing. Just save the date for an event we're having at the rec center. I had mentioned this before. Unfortunately, the topic has come up again, so it is good timing to have this event. March 31st is National Stop the Bleed Day. It's a big initiative across the country on training people how to do bleeding control in an active shooter incident. So we are doing an event from 1 o'clock till 4 p.m. at the rec center, March 31st. It's going to include bleeding control, again, for active shooter events, active shooter response, and there's going to be a discussion on the opioid problem in our community. So this is open to the public, it's open to everybody. There's some, the trainers are NYPD officers, detectives, and tactical guys that train all around the country. So it should be a good event. So it's appropriate for the timings.
March 31st, the weekend?
March 31st is Saturday.
Saturday, thank you.
Anyone else?
You want some of these advertisements?
Well, I'll take care of this.
Great.
We have, I want to acknowledge that the town has received a complaint from a resident on South Street. Apparently, there was some issues with runoff, water going into the basement. I know the complaint initially went to our highway superintendent, who jumped right on it, was out there, took a look at the situation. It appears that the problem is being caused by the excessively high water table that we have right now, and the runoff into the Great Swamp. And we are going to send our town engineer out to evaluate it further, and then I will report back to the resident, as will our highway superintendent, I'm sure. We also, in close proximity to the issue, there are some stormwater retrofit improvements that were installed by both the town and the East of Hudson Watershed Corporation. We've had the engineer for the East of Hudson Watershed Corporation take a look at the issue, and he has provided a letter to the town board, and I would, urge everybody to review that as well as the complaint, and we will try to resolve this as amicably as we can. Do some announcements?
Sure. First off, I think probably everyone knows that the flu season is not over, and the governor declared a public health threat when it comes to the influenza. And so the health department is continuing to do free flu clinics this week, and they run daily 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, except that tomorrow they will run till 6 p.m. So I guess not for the people at home, but if anyone out in our audience has not gotten their flu shot, you can go to the health department anytime through those hours and get a free flu shot. So I would encourage anyone to take advantage of that. We have a flyer here that is, I'm going to show it to the camera for a second, but it's encouraging people through the United Way of Westchester and Putnam to become foster parents. And the number to dial for information is dial 211. Let's see if I can hold that up for a second. I always feel like there has to be silence while they're scanning in. I don't know why, but. And then lastly, we have something here from the Hudson Valley. Well, this is the 211 Get Connected, Get Answers. And it speaks that it says, "Dear friend, there are children in Putnam who need a temporary, safe, and loving home. We have a fantastic foster care system here in Putnam, but there are never enough homes. For there are vulnerable children, especially for teens and sibling groups. You can help us promote the need for foster parents by hanging the enclosed poster in your office, distribute them to your community, and by giving them to your friends." So, of course, we would like to encourage everyone to support the United Way of Westchester and Putnam and dial 211 if you'd like to get involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Public recognition. If anybody has anything they wish to present to the board, if you would approach the mic and state your name.
My name is Karen Vieira Powers, and I'm on the Board of Trustees at the Patterson Library. And I would just like to make a couple of announcements about things that are going on at the library that the public should know about. First of all, ARP has sent consultants for tax preparation for people over 50 who are low income. And they'll be there until April 13th. They come every Friday from 10:30 to 2:30. And you need to call the library to make an appointment. The second thing is that we have a New York State Health Insurance Navigator, and she assists people with New York State health insurance applications. Walk-ins are welcome. She's there every first and third Monday of the month, all day long. And she'll be there for the whole year of 2018. Last thing is that on March 8th at 7 p.m. we're going to have paint night. We've had many paint nights before, and an artist will come and guide us through 2 hours of painting. And it's a fundraiser for the library. It's $45 a person, and you will receive supplies and 1 glass of wine. The rest will be donated toward the library. As I'm sure you all know, we've now suffered a tremendous loss of funds from the state. And these fundraisers are becoming more important. All right. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3 very good programs. You want to ask?
The gentleman's name that usually comes.
George.
George. I'm sorry. George last meeting said that the support that was offered for tax preparation, even though it was through AARP. He said there was no age restriction on it, I believe.
Oh,
So
okay.
you had mentioned something
I
about...
thought there was an age restriction.
I thought he said that they...
But it is low income.
Okay.
Did he say that?
He did. He said it was AARP, but he said, don't be fooled by the name. It said that it was not age qualifying to get assistance.
Oh,
That you just
okay.
needed to make an appointment.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you...
Anybody else
corrected.
remember that?
And actually, I talked to George, and I told him I was going to announce this, and he never told me this.
Okay.
It's always good to announce it, you know, more than once because we get the word out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Anyone else have anything they wish to bring up to the board?
Chief, you looked like you were hesitating, like you weren't sure.
It's been a long 24 hours. Matt Spinder, Chief of the Patterson Fire Department. First off, I just wanted to thank the town board for scheduling the meeting tonight of all nights. Here we are on Valentine's Day, and hopefully we're not all going to end up in divorce court. I wanted to start off by publicly acknowledging my members for a job well done. Last Monday, February 5th, at approximately 1700, the Patterson Fire Department was dispatched for a traumatic injuries call. Units arrived to find a 2-year-old child who got his hands stuck in a food processor juicer. Our members quickly and expertly cut apart the machine, freeing his severely injured hand. He was turned over to Putnam County Medic 4 and Patterson EMS, and subsequently flown via helicopter to Westchester Medical Center in Valhalla. Putnam Lake assisted the Patterson Fire Department with setting up the landing zone. Despite his injuries, last word was that his prognosis for a full recovery was very positive. As the fire chief, it's my responsibility to ensure that our people have the best equipment and the best training to perform when it really counts. This is where your money goes. We have the best equipment, our people are well trained in its use, and they consistently perform. Nice work to all those that were involved. All right, I want to talk about vehicle replacement. At the meeting a few weeks ago, another question came up about the 2016 ambulance. As I explained to this board already, the ambulance purchase was approved by the board. The money to replace the 2005 ambulance had been approved every year for the last 10 years preceding the purchase. This coming April, the loan will be paid off early, saving almost $5,600 in interest. So hopefully that will put to rest the more discussion about the ambulance.
Okay, if I could just interrupt, so
Please.
so we're clear. When you say it was approved by the board, it was approved by the fire department board, not our board.
It was approved by your board because those budget requests were in the budget every year for the preceding 10 years. The replacement for that ambulance was on the vehicle replacement schedule.
Yes.
And the money to replace that ambulance
Okay.
was approved by this board
Okay, I
over
agree
the
with-
last 10 years. That money was already set aside before the money was
Okay.
was
I
spent on the ambulance.
absolutely agree with you if we're talking about that vehicle was purchased as part of the vehicle replacement program.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. The Fire Department Board of Directors recently voted to approve moving the vast majority of our vehicle replacement fund from a money market account to a certificate of deposit, which will generate an additional $7,500 in interest income at no risk. That will be done sometime later this week. The paperwork was already signed. There continues to be comments about the vehicle replacement fund, and any insinuation that the money has been mismanaged or misappropriated are downright false and, quite frankly, offensive. The establishment of the fire department's vehicle replacement fund precedes not only my tenure as fire chief, but my time in the department as well. I've been in the department for over 16 years, and it was started before then. Just because it's done differently than the town does the vehicle replacement fund doesn't mean it's wrong. And just because you don't understand how it works doesn't mean that there is any mismanagement. The fund, as with all of our accounts and operations, have been scrutinized by independent auditors. All of the money that is supposed to be there is in fact there. There are 4 separate and distinct issues. First, let's talk about how it works. There are a number of reasons why you may think it's underfunded, and I will explain how we got here. As I said, the fund has been in existence and managed under the present method for well over 20 years. Previous town administration never raised any concerns about the fund or the way it was operated. The vehicle replacement fund shortfall analysis that you handed us a few weeks ago is flawed in a number of respects. It uses estimates that were updated and submitted as part of the 2018-19 budget, but fails to include the 2018-19 budget contribution of almost $250-some thousand. It also fails to use the estimate. The correct estimate balance for the fund, underestimating by over $400,000 the amount that's currently in reserve. The department requested $278,250 for fiscal year 2018-19, and the town funded only $250,914. Even with the additional $15,000 for the ambulance in the tentative supplemental EMS contract, the town chose to underfund the vehicle replacement fund by over $12,300, which continues to explain why the thing is underfunded. As I explained before, since its establishment, the estimated replacement costs of the vehicles were periodically adjusted. They were not always adjusted. If a larger increase was necessary in the operational budget, the increase to the vehicle replacement fund was held down to keep the fire department's overall budget increase below 2%. I believe last year was the first year since I've been the chief, which I took over in 2012, that our budget request exceeded 2%. I realize that we all compete for available funding, but our budget was increasing by only about $15,000 per year. 2% of the town's budget is over $250,000. The town was saving a lot of money over the last couple of years by not funding the vehicle replacement fund at the proper level. As a simple example, when a vehicle is replaced, historically how it worked was the replacement cost today was $200,000. So for a vehicle with a 20-year life, we divided the $200,000 by 20 years, and we put $10,000 a year away for that vehicle. We did that for all the vehicles in our fleet. So maybe due to increase in the operational budget or other factors, that replacement cost wasn't adjusted for 10 years. So for 10 years, we put away $10,000. At some point, we looked at the replacement cost for the rig and said, wow, this thing has gone up now to $300,000. We need to adjust the figures. So we divided the $300,000 by 20 years. That gave us $15,000 a year. We started to put that away. After another 5 years, we look at it again and say, the vehicle replacement now for that vehicle is $400,000. So $400,000 divided by 20 gives us $20,000 a year. So at the end of 20 years, we have 10 years at 10 is $100,000, 15 years at 5 is $75,000, and 5 more years at 20 is another $100,000. That totals $275,000. That for something 5 years ago we already said was going to be $400,000. That's why it's short. And they're all that way, right? Using this methodology, it will always be underfunded because we never went back to catch up. As recently as 10 years ago, right before it was replaced, our rescue truck was budgeted at a replacement cost of only $400,000. It cost almost $1 million for the vehicle and the equipment over 8 years ago. So even with prices adjusted today, if not caught up, the thing will always be underfunded. And we didn't even get the entire amount that we had requested for in next year's budget. So, you guys have said that you wanted the vehicle replacement fund ideally 100% funded, correct?
If you're going to be, yes, if we're putting money away
Okay.
for vehicle replacement, then that vehicle replacement should be fully funded.
Okay. So, We got a letter from our apparatus consultant, who we used for consulting work in the past. He has almost 40 years of experience as a fire apparatus mechanic, and he and his business partners have been involved in the specifications and construction of hundreds of pieces of fire apparatus across the country. They've estimated a 5% annual increase in the cost of fire apparatus due to materials, new NFPA and EPA standards, etc. So using just the 6 large pieces of fire apparatus that we own, assuming a 5% annual increase, if we run that out 20 years from what it would cost today and increase it every year 5% for 20 years, the cost to fully fund the replacement would be, make sure you're sitting down for this, approximately $598,000 a year, okay? And that does not include another probably $100,000 additional for the smaller rolling stock of the fleet, like the chief's vehicles, support vehicles, brush truck, ambulance, etc. So, are we still interested in trying to fully fund the vehicle replacement fund?
Could you give us that number again? I want to make sure everybody heard it.
$598,000 just for the 6 large pieces of apparatus.
For those pieces of apparatus.
And that assumes that they were all brand new on year 1, right? Because you're saying a 20-year look forward for all of them.
That assumes if we replace them today,
Right. And now we were
and we
looking
needed to replace them again in 20 more years,
I understand.
assuming a 5% increase per year,
Right.
that's what that would work out to be.
Right.
So, let's talk about funding new purchases. If we only funded the smaller vehicles annually and made all of the large purchases through either leasing, a loan, or a bond, the cost would be higher due to interest. All right, as an example, I have a ladder truck that's due to be replaced next year. The cost to replace now is somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million. So just assuming that we're going to use the $1.2 million figure and borrow the entire amount, we're looking at approximately $360,000 to $460,000 in interest alone over the course of 15 years. Each source, leasing, the loan, or the bond, have advantages and disadvantages due to additional costs, rates, etc. 2 big changes that have occurred within the last 60 days have made bonds less attractive. First, interest rates have gone up and are anticipated to continue to rise as the Federal Reserve attempts to head off inflation by driving rates up. Second, the tax reform bill recently enacted by Congress cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. This effectively lowers the interest rate at which banks are willing to lend or lease money, since they are paying less tax on the interest that they're receiving. Loans and leases are expected to more closely compare with tax-exempt funding like bonds. We could certainly start the process now and quickly lock in at a lower rate before the rates rise. And we've had that discussion with one of our banks. So, a few weeks ago, we had a meeting specifically about the EMS contract. And Mr. Williams, you handed us a contract, proposed contract for 2018-2019. You mentioned that the most significant change in the contract was Section 19 capital plan. It stipulated that the town would, beginning in the 2018-19 contract year, hold all reserve funds from that date forward, including the vehicle replacement fund. The President and I were told by Mr. Williams that the reason the town board insisted on this stipulation was that the town could bond purchases and get much better rates on funding, correct?
In part, yes.
Okay. Well, you were at the meeting, Mrs. Smith, right?
Miss.
Miss Smith. You told us that the reason was that the town could get.
I did say that at that meeting.
Okay. That's not true, all right? We have at our disposal a mechanism by which we can borrow money in the form of a tax-exempt loan at rates comparable to that of municipal bonds. Internal Revenue Code sections 147 Frank and 150 Edward provide a process by which a qualified fire department can borrow money through a tax-exempt loan. Although technically a bond, it offers advantages that bonds issued by the town do not. The rates are within 0.25%, the last rates that we got from the bank earlier this week. But because it doesn't require bond counsel, the difference is even less. Also, because it doesn't require a referendum, there is no cost for holding the referendum, which makes the difference even less still. So I'm not sure why the town would want the additional expense of owning a fire truck. Owning the vehicles greatly increases the liability exposure for the town, not to mention increased insurance expense on the town. It makes no sense for the town to get involved with holding reserve funds and buying fire trucks, which leads us to the final issue. Since we have avenues of funding that approximate the lower rates and tax-exempt status of municipal bonds, there is absolutely no legitimate reason for the town to hold on to our reserve funds, including the vehicle replacement fund. We are a separate, independent, not-for-profit 501c3 corporation. We absolutely will not sign any contract relinquishing control of our reserve funds, including the vehicle replacement fund.
All right, to start off, at the meeting, you had made mention that you thought you could bond the vehicles at the same rate the town could. I had asked you to provide us that information. I trust that you're still willing to provide us that information, so I look forward to seeing it.
As I said, while they are technically bonds, the bank considers them a tax-exempt loan. So because they are tax exempt, they're offering us rates that are comparable to municipal bonds without the added expense of the bond issue.
Understood. Second, everything you've said here tonight just reinforces my opinion about the town needing to be more involved in the purchase of vehicles. You made mention of the fact that the fire department, not you, but your predecessors, had requested the town to put aside a certain amount for a vehicle replacement for a rescue truck of $400,000. That was what was put aside, but the fire department purchased a rescue truck for $1 million. Now, it may have been fully warranted that you spent that kind of money on a rescue truck, but it wasn't budgeted for. It wasn't budgeted for, and yet the taxpayers have incurred that expense even though they had no decision in making that expense. Third, all right, correct me if I'm wrong, you have currently a little over $1.1 million in your vehicle replacement fund.
Incorrect.
How much?
I believe the last figure was 1.4 million and change.
Okay, 1.4 million. If this year we give you another $260,000, and next year we give you another $260,000, that's going to bring your fund up to close to $2 million, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. According to your vehicle replacement fund, your schedule, at the end of 2019, you will need to have in that vehicle replacement fund somewhere close to $3.5 million based on the cost that you provided us in that vehicle replacement fund, which you have told us is much, much less than what you actually need to buy those vehicles. So you're going to need probably close to twice what you currently will have at that time, at the end of next year, to replace vehicles, and you're not going to have that money. And the only way for the town to come up with that money is, to substantially raise everybody's taxes, which is what we're trying not to do. So yes, my opinion is the town needs to be more involved in the purchase of vehicles over there. And my recommendation to the board is we hold the vehicle replacement fund and we work closely with the fire department to purchase vehicles, to make sure that the vehicle replacement fund is funded and that the taxpayers are well served with the money that we're providing to the fire department. And my opinion's not going to change. And I'm sorry to hear that you're of the opinion that you're not going to sign a contract with the town if we don't give you money for vehicles that, so you can spend what you want. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to burden the taxpayers of this town. I want to work with the fire department. I need to work with the fire department. We recognize your great service, but I can't continue to give you money that for a vehicle replacement fund that we clearly agree we wouldn't run it the same way. So, anybody else have any comments or
Well,
opinions?
first off, in terms of the rescue, you know, I can say that, again, I cannot speak for the years before I took over, what the budget increases were, but I would assume that they were substantially the same as what they've been since 2012, which is right around 2% or less. So if that number was not adjusted from back in 1989, when the original rescue was purchased, and that number was low, you know, whether the town paid more every year since 1989 or pays more now for that vehicle when it was purchased in 2008, the fact remains that the cost of the vehicle and the equipment was going to be the same.
Maybe, maybe not. But Matt, I mean, we budget with the town board, with our departments, and we expect our department heads to stay within those budgets. Similarly, we give the fire department funding to fund a vehicle. And it's unfair to the taxpayers of this town for us, for the fire department to say we need $400,000 to replace the rescue truck. And then to take that $400,000 and buy $1 million truck, and then come back and hand the taxpayers of this town that bill and say, sorry, it was underfunded. That's a conversation we need to have before that vehicle, that truck is purchased.
And we certainly have no problem sitting down with the town board, as we've done the last couple of years, in budget discussions, and talk about realistically adjusting the vehicle replacement fund to more adequately address the funding shortfall. And we certainly would welcome a discussion to sit down with you guys and discuss some different funding avenues, whether they be leases or loans or bonds or whatever. But that still doesn't change the fact that fundamentally we are a separate, not-for-profit corporation, and there's no reason for you, the town board, to be involved in micromanaging the vehicle replacement fund and holding on to that money.
The reason is we're providing the funding, and we have to watch out for the best interests of the taxpayers of this town. That's why we review a budget every year. That's our purpose.
Excuse me. Eleanor Smith, President, Patterson Fire Department. I'm just a little confused. How is you holding on to our vehicle replacement money going forward being a less of a burden to the town if you hold it or we hold it? I don't understand that comment, number one. And number two is, we did have the money for the rescue truck and we paid for it. It is paid. We've been buying vehicles. We're not asking for more money. We have the money. We pay for some of it. We've been able to purchase the things that we need so far. So we have to move forward.
Now, I'm confused because your chief just told us that for us to properly fund the vehicle replacement fund, then we would need to increase the contribution of the town.
No, you said
taxpayer.
I'm talking about the rescue truck. You said you budgeted $400 and you spent $1 million. It's like we went out and bought something fancy because we didn't need it. That's what it sounds like from you. We needed that vehicle. It's worth its weight in gold right now. And I just want to understand how is it that if you're holding the money or if we're holding the money, less of a burden for the town?
I don't think the supervisor said anything that
He did. That's his exact
No, he said maybe it might have even been warranted that it was that much. I think what he's saying is if you have $400 in your fund, $400,000 for a vehicle, and it comes out you need $1 million for the vehicle, then that should be a discussion. You should come to us and say, listen, we're underfunded. We need this vehicle. It's $1 million, and it's needed, but we only have $400,000. Then you need to come to us, and we need to figure out how we can help you fund that.
Yeah, I mean,
not just go and steal, not just go, I shouldn't say steal, not just take money from that's appropriate for another vehicle and and take it and put it towards that $1 million? Because where that extra $600,000 come from? It's in your account, but it's budgeted for another vehicle to be replaced, correct?
It is, but again, my question is, whether we took, again, I'd have to go back and look at what it was back in 2007, whatever it was at $400,000, if it was $20,000 a year that we were putting away, and we should have been putting away more, whether we put $20,000 away for 20 years and then had to come up with another way to fund the additional expense based upon the cost increase of the vehicles and the cost of replacing 20-year-old equipment on the old vehicle, or whether we started off and like I did now, 20 years ago we said, okay, well, we can expect a 5% increase per year in this thing, so what is it going to be in 2009 when we replace it? And we had to put more money away for those 20 years. At the end of the day, the money, the cost is still the same. So I think what she's asking is whether we increase the vehicle replacement fund and change the way we're doing it, or whether we look to bond, borrow, lease in order to get the money and probably pay some additional charges and interest to do that. However we get there, we still have to get to the same place. So how does the town holding on to the vehicle replacement fund change the fact that we still need to get to the same point with the same money at the end of the day?
Well, I think you actually, Chief, came up with part of the solution when we met on our budget meetings, because you had said that there are probably multiple pieces of equipment that both fire departments don't need. You mentioned the heavy rescue truck as an example. You've got a state-of-the-art truck, and you had said, I don't believe that Putnam Lake would need a heavy rescue truck because we already have the state-of-the-art in the whole region. And I think you brought up the idea that we need to look as a town, as one town, not as Putnam Lake and as Patterson, how we fund the equipment for our fire departments and how we share services and how we share equipment and work together. Because as you've said, you guys work hand in hand. You're like, it's not two different departments. It's one town here. So I think that's something that the future discussion has to revolve around, and looking at both departments' equipment lines and figuring out, because I think what you've outlined here is that to properly fund all of this, and Putnam Lake has some of the same concerns you have, of course, is that this town probably can't afford to fully fund two departments the way we're headed, and I'm not saying full consolidation, but I'm saying consolidation of assets maybe, sharing of assets, proper use of assets. And I think, and that was your, you had brought that to the table, and I think that you were right on.
Well,
when you said
you brought that up, and I know you've thrown out that word unsustainable before.
Well, no, and you're giving me the data, so it's not me on my own. It's what you've outlined just tonight. You said it would be 20 years, it would be almost $12 million that would be needed into that fund. $12 million at almost $600 a year, $598 a year. That's $12 million. I'm not saying it's not warranted. The equipment's necessary to save lives. I'm certainly not going to you brought up a very valid case tonight as to why the services are necessary. Obviously, you didn't need a heavy rescue truck to tear apart a food processor, but that's, the bottom line is
the
it's
equipment,
important
the
to
equipment,
that,
the
to that
equipment that's
family.
carried on that rig, and
Yeah.
the equipment that was used in that emergency,
Right.
is just, a small sample of equipment.
Of course.
Of many things that rig is designed to handle, and it's done, it's done a fantastic job with all kinds of other things since we've had it back in 2008. I mean, is there a dollar amount in the Putnam Lake budget that they're looking to replace their rescue at some point in the near future?
They have a vehicle replacement fund, yes.
And how does the vehicle replacement fund in Putnam Lake, how is it administered?
I couldn't tell you right now. We've been focusing on your vehicle replacement because you were kind enough to bring us information.
But you're not telling. You don't know how public does their vehicle replacement.
I know they have a lump sum for vehicle replacement. I know when they are going to replace a vehicle, they come and have a conversation with us before they purchase it. But let's not deflect this over onto Putnam Lake. Let's stay focused here.
Well,
You know,
I'm just-
one of the problems that we have is you have identified for us, there's a huge shortfall in the vehicle replacement fund that you're currently holding if you were to replace the vehicles that you need to replace now. You've also identified to us that you would like to see an addition onto the fire department because the vehicles that you think are appropriate for this community are bigger than the bays that you have. And so you haven't actually replaced some of the vehicles. And everything you say, Chief, I mean, you're a very knowledgeable person about this. I am not. But I do understand a little bit about financing, and we're talking about a lot of money here. We're talking about an addition onto the firehouse. We're talking about, you know, the purchase of additional vehicles. We're talking about a shortfall in the current.
It's not additional vehicles, it's replacing vehicles.
Replacing vehicles, okay,
And
fine,
it's-
replacing vehicles.
And
we're
the
talking
addition,
about-
and the addition, and the town board was there. You
And-
know, the
yeah.
fact that we have to turn and walk sideways to squeeze behind a rig and the gear rack is not exactly a safe, safe situation. And the rigs, you know, have to be the size that they are to carry the amount of water that they do, because we don't have a pressurized hydrant system in the town. We're consolidating our fleet. We're trying to combine vehicles that do multiple functions into one vehicle, as opposed to having 2 or 3 vehicles that used to do those things separately. So, but again, my question is, no matter how we get to the end point, certainly, like I said, we've sat down with you guys before and discussed the budgets. We've done that for the last couple of years. When you've asked us, we've come in and we sat down with you, and hopefully we've enlightened the town board to how the fire department operates and why the money is needed for the things that we've requested. But it still doesn't change the fact that at some point, when we need to replace these vehicles, we have avenues of funding that closely approximate the issuance of municipal bonds. So if we can borrow the money at the same rate that the town can borrow the money, why would the town want to get involved in owning fire apparatus? And why does the town feel the need to hold on to vehicle replacement money?
We feel the need to hold on to the vehicle replacement fund, A, because we think we can finance it cheaper, at a cheaper rate than you can. B, we need to be more involved in the decision-making that the fire department is making on the vehicles. Pure and simple.
We wouldn't be owning the vehicle, would we? We'd sell it to them for like $1.
You know,
Well, our-
sitting here right now, we are going into unknown territory.
Our attorney
Because-
has told us that you cannot issue a bond and buy a fire truck and then turn around and sell it to us for $1. So you bond the vehicle, you own the vehicle.
Okay.
And you own the insurance. You have the liability of the vehicle if something happens to it, which
We're paying
I'm not
for that
exactly
now.
sure why.
We're paying for all that now. So,
You're really not.
we certainly are.
You're really not.
Where's your money coming from?
Oh, the increased liability, if something were to happen to that vehicle, if the vehicle was involved in an accident, you don't own the vehicles now, but
I
you would
understand
own it,
that.
but you would own it in the future.
Sure. We own a lot of highway trucks too, and we have liability, general liability on all of those.
How does our replacement vehicle fund work with our, say, our highway trucks?
We fully fund the vehicle replacement before we buy a vehicle.
And how do we make up for that, the increase of depreciation
Of the replacement.
yeah, each year?
Well, we properly fund the vehicle if it's not fully funded based on the highway superintendent's recommendation for the vehicle, then we have to figure out where that money's going to come from. You know, maybe we have to go back to the taxpayers and raise taxes if we believe it appropriate. You know, maybe we will borrow the money, you know, but we have that discussion in public.
And how is that different? I don't get it. I don't understand. And that just proved to you, or just gave you information stating that we can get it for the same amount of money, and you're just saying we can bond it better, or
cheaper.
Eleanor, the fire department has informed the town board that, A, the vehicle replacement fund needs a substantial increase in funding to fund the vehicles that are necessary for this town. You've also informed the town that you are looking at doing an addition onto the building, which again, is going to be paid for by taxpayer funds. The taxpayers are stressed in this town. They're reaching a breaking limit. We need to be more aware of how we're funding things and what the implications are to our taxpayers. And this town board, I'm very proud of this town board. You know, I've sat through many, many budgets with this town, and they spent maybe 2 hours going through the budget, 4 hours going through the budget. I mean, this town board probably spent 8, 9, 10 days going through the budget. We met with the chief and yourself on a number of different occasions. We went over to the firehouse so that we could have a better understanding of what the needs are and what the funding is. And yes, I'm sorry that you don't think this is appropriate, but I think given our current economic climate and the situation that we have where you've got a shortfall in funding that the taxpayers are going to have to come up with somehow, we need to be more involved in that process. And that's our intent.
And we're saying that we don't have a problem with the town board being more involved.
Good.
The process, as we laid it out, the process that's listed under those sections of the Internal Revenue Code provides for a public hearing, provides for ultimate approval of the tax-exempt loan, the bond issue, if you will, by the town board. So there is oversight, there is involvement, there is public hearing, but again, if we're talking about the difference between a tax-exempt loan and a bond being maybe up to 0.25%, maybe less, for that ladder truck that we talked about, you're talking about a $30,000 difference in interest. And then you have to subtract out from that bond counsel, which is probably at least 1.5% or more, and the cost of holding the referendum. So now that cuts into it, and they're essentially the same. So again, if in all that process, through the public hearing, the approval of the town board to borrow the money, the approval of the town board to borrow the money for the capital improvement plan that we discussed, if all that stuff is in place, I still fail to see why the town board insists on holding on to the money.
And if the town board is taking that money and putting it in a dedicated account available to the fire department upon request, what's the issue with that? What's the issue with that?
Because we don't think we should commingle our money. We need to put it in our account. We already put it in a.
Trust me, we're not commingling your money.
Well, in the thing, it also said that you're allowed to use it or move it around as your need, if the town needs it for other purposes.
So, Chief, how do you suggest the best way for your department to run your vehicle replacement fund?
Well, I think there's probably, the best thing is probably a combination of the two things. We have to look at, we have a number of vehicles that need to be replaced within the next couple of years. And certainly the tax-exempt loan option kind of gives us the best of both worlds, because we can borrow a substantial amount of money to replace some of those vehicles, and then going forward, keep a closer eye on the annual increase in the prices to keep that fund close to 100% funded. I think if we borrow the money and spread it out over a longer period of time than we typically have done in the past, it's probably going to involve a lot less of an increase than that $598,000 that we originally talked about. But to address your point, which I started to address before about the rescue truck, you're telling me tonight that you have no idea how they even do their vehicle replacement fund and how much they have budgeted for that vehicle. And you're talking about an area of 4 square miles, which is pretty much all residential highway, roadway, and they have rescue tools on their engine tanker. We don't have a boat. If we need a boat, Putnam Lake has a boat, we call them and they bring it over. We have plenty of spots where we might need a boat, but we didn't feel it necessary to buy one. So why the town board would be looking to approve hundreds and thousands of dollars for a rescue truck for a place that probably doesn't need it when we already have one, I don't understand that either.
Well, I think that's a more detailed conversation for the coming year that we have to have with both departments, to really sit down together, not individually, but as a group, and say, let's lay all the equipment out and all the function, because you bring up some valid points. I think it needs to be a more global, holistic conversation, including you and the chief from Putt Lake and the town board. And I don't think that's a conversation to hash out tonight in regard to specific pieces. But again, I brought it up mainly because you brought the awareness to me about the idea that, and maybe we use the word unsustainable, but the reality is it's a small town and it's a lot of professional equipment that's necessary to protect our residents, and I think we have to look at ways of doing things a little more cost consciously. And that's all. I don't want to belabor, like I said, I didn't want to say too much because I know last time you took some offense to what I said, and that wasn't intended. I think the example you brought up was a great example of why your volunteer base is so strong and is so good, because it provides an excellent service, a necessary service. Certainly, as you mentioned, the parents of that child would say there is no price that is too much, right? That when it comes to protecting people, but we need to certainly make sure that we're doing things in the most appropriate manner. That's all. I didn't want to get into a protracted conversation about that, but okay.
Well, and again, I think the discussion that our board of directors has had is, if the original reason that we were told the town board was insisting upon holding on to the money was because they could get a better rate, that's obviously not the case.
That was a reason.
Okay? You told us
So
that
let's
was
be
the
clear.
reason. You told us that was the
is a reason.
Okay? But if that's not a valid argument, then we feel that there's no other legitimate reason. There is oversight. If we decide to do another avenue of funding besides just relying on what's in the vehicle replacement fund to make purchases, if we change the funding methodology, or if we end up borrowing money, that still doesn't explain to us why the town board would feel it necessary to get involved with holding on to the money. We're a separate corporation. We're a vendor of the town.
All right.
We contract with the town to provide fire protection, so you're involved. You're involved in the decision-making process of borrowing the money. You're involved in the decision-making process of, the apparatus purchases. But let us do our job and let us provide the service. Just give us the equipment and give us the funding with which to do it.
Acknowledged. Anyone else have anything they wish to bring up before the board? Going once. Come on, Bruce. What the heck?
Motion to go into executive session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.